Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. With Season 2 Reloaded here in Warzone, we obviously got a bunch of new updates and patch notes that we covered in a full video yesterday. And in it, of course, we got the standard bug fixes, some gameplay changes, some interesting updates to loadouts and trade stations and all sorts of stuff there. And of course, we got several meta updates and weapon changes there. The usual buff to this rifle, nerf to this SMG. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. We did, however, see one specific set of updates that I do want to focus a bit more on because it's actually, in theory, we'll have to see how it plays out in the coming days, right? We're obviously all just getting first hands on with Season 2 Reloaded now, so we're going to have to, spend some time getting used to things again and really testing things out thoroughly to see how much of an impact this is going to have. But they did make a specific set of changes to, not surprisingly, Black Ops 6 guns, but instead an entire section deliberately focused on Modern Warfare 3 guns. So if we go through, we look at these general adjustments. They made a bunch of specific changes just for MW2 and MW3 guns. And you might be asking yourself, well, why are they focused on those guns? We know by now they want all the new games guns to be good. Well, this actually is kind of a delayed update, one that we already saw hit a lot of Black Ops 6 guns. You may recall a little while back in Season 1, they made a massive, I would sort of say, accessibility and application/execution update to Black Ops 6 guns, where they inherently made all of them easier to use. They lowered visual shake and visual noise and basically made the weapons a lot more straightforward, where it was more so focused on their actual physical recoil pattern, whether that was shooting up and to the right or up and to the left or like in a reverse S-curve or something like that, right? Focusing more on that and less on all the visual smoke coming off the edge of your gun or the muzzle flash or the random bobbing when you are strafing with an ADS and everything like that. And that was fantastic for Black Ops 6 guns. That update went through and everyone is like, wow, every gun from BO6 feels like it's a laser beam now. This feels a lot more like OG Warzone with like MW 2019 and Cold War guns. Only problem was at the time, they didn't do anything for Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 weapons, meaning these still had very obnoxious idle sway and weapon bob and weapon bounce and all sorts of things that now only made the gap larger between Black Ops 6 guns and the meta there, and then everything from MW2 and MW3. But as we can see here, in these patch notes, they've now gone through and applied similar updates. Across the board, for every MW2 and MW3 weapon, they've reduced the idle sway on all of them, they've reduced the weapon bob, and they've also reduced the turn sway. So I'll actually throw up some footage here that I just got quickly in the firing range yesterday of what a Black Ops 6 gun looks like, obviously with this update fully applied to it, and then what a pre-patch Modern Warfare 3 weapon is like the MCW or something, right? And you'll notice that when you're just simply standing still ADSing, there's going to be some weapon sway and some idle sway on both guns. It's very minimal on the XM4, and it's honestly not terrible on something like an MCW, but you definitely notice it, and you can notice it sways maybe a little bit more up and down or left to right over time, right? You really start to notice the differences though when you go to actually strafe with the weapon, which you're probably doing in the vast majority of fights. Rarely ever are you playing in COD, specifically in Warzone, and you're standing still while you're firing your AR or your SMG or your LMG or whatever, right? You're always moving backwards, forwards, left to right. So weapon bob is going to be present at all times. And when you compare those, it's very different. Looking at what a Black Ops 6 weapon feels like when you're strafing versus an MW3 one. The accuracy difference is incredibly noticeable. And then as you're firing a weapon, same deal, the weapon bob and sway that is then injected into that, weapon's recoil pattern, it's noticeable too. Black Ops 6 weapons just feel a lot more smooth. So this is a change in general now that should really, in my opinion, bring the weapons more together, which is ultimately a good thing. If you're going to have almost 200, we might have over 200 weapons in Warzone at this point. If you're going to be, hard pressed on, hey, we got to do carryover for Warzone, we're going to have Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 guns in the game, you might as well have them be applicable and competitive and actually in the conversation rather than just being in the game so that you can look at them, but you're like, oh, I want to use my, MW2 AR. Well, I'm gonna get fried, but at least it looks pretty when it's in my hands before I get beamed from a guy 200 meters away with a BO6 rifle, right? Like, they really haven't had much application up until this point. There are a few one-off meta choices from these games, but for the most part, these weapons were largely irrelevant because there was a significant feel gap between the two. Black Ops 6 weapons just felt better. So inherently, all MW2 and MW3 weapons are going to feel better in gunfights now. That's huge. They also attacked some attachments, mainly ammo attachments on MW2 and MW3 guns. So when you're using things like high grain or high velocity to, increase your consistency in the mid to long range, or even help out some close range guns by increasing their range and velocity and whatnot, it's going to be more consistent there. It's going to be like Black Ops 6 attachments that focus more on pros and less on cons. So you're not going to see huge damage range penalties or recoil penalties involved here. And then with magazines in general, everyone's obviously using extended mags, 30, 40, 50, 60 rounders, right? Depending on the gun. You're going to want to have those for Warzone squad fights in general. Now they're not going to be nearly as slow. The movement penalties have been reduced. They've reduced the handling penalties on those too. So MW2 and MW3 weapons now are going to feel and behave a lot more like Black Ops 6 guns. But they didn't make any individual weapon adjustments to MW3 guns. It's not like they buffed or nerfed this rifle or that SMG. This was a universal update to all guns, which now, even without any specific weapon tuning, allows a lot of these to become a lot more competitive. Like for instance, we're here on True Game Data, and this is still with the just general Season 2 values. So like the BO6 guns that got adjusted, I know the AK got a slight buff, the Model L got some nerfs, the AEK full auto on here got some buffs as well. So those stats are not gonna be perfectly accurate, but it's still gonna be plenty of a discussion that it's not going to make a huge difference, And when you look at this now, we've already had, in terms of a TTK meta, very good competition here. You look at something like the Holger 556, our bright pink line here, combination shots on 300 health, and throughout, this thing is looking super competitive. The AK is obviously a standout here. This thing's insane over range, but it's a lot more difficult to use. You might think something like the Holger or the SVA or, the MTZ 556 or a BAL is more consistent and more, reliable for use. So if you were to take the AK out of the equation, you're not going to use that. What's up with these other easy to use BO6 guns, the AIMs, the Model L? Well, the BAL, our yellow line, right there. The Holger, our pink line, right there with these other options. Like, it's close in competition, but the gap here was like, yeah, the Holger might kill just as fast as an AIMS over range, or the SVA might be insane in the close range with its TTK, but then you compare that to something from BO6, like, an aggressive AIM setup or an aggressive, other rifle setup, and it's like, well, you feel the difference right away. You're running around with an SVA or you're running around with a BAL 27 and it's like, yeah, I can kill quick, but I'm having to do 2-3 times the work to stay on target and to make sure I'm accurate. Plus the overall handling and feel of the gun because of my build here just doesn't feel nearly as smooth. Whereas I can throw on a Black Ops 6 gun, not worry about hurting anything. It's going to be all pros. I can play into the aggressiveness and I'll be good to go. Now, you do still have discrepancies like the AK. If you really want to focus on this, it's going to be by far most difficult weapon to use on a list like this because the recoil, but you can focus on 8 attachments and make that a lot easier so this truly fast TTK stays a bit more accurate. You're going to have that advantage still with Black Ops 6 guns, the ability to utilize Gunfighter. However, this update inherently creates a much greater competition. And obviously, we're just focused on like the mid to long range here with this specific example. But close range now, things like the Supri, which was already going crazy because of the movement speed, now has, a better ability to be competitive versus Black Ops 6 subs. The close range is going to benefit from this. The long range is going to benefit from this. Still, for the most part, you're probably going to want to lean towards Black Ops 6 weapons. Like, they are still objectively more convenient for most players, especially if you're more of an average skill level or more of a casual player, right? You're probably going to want to lean towards the weapons that are going to benefit you more with less work, and mostly Black Ops 6 weapons will still stand out there, but it's not a huge gap like it was before. And if you want to put in the effort and you want to put the attention to detail in with MW2 and MW3 guns, you're now not risking nearly as much. There's much more payoff for using those guns than there was before this update. So this is something that I hope they continue to fine tune. Like I said, we're just on day of updates. So we have a lot of in-game testing to do. The stats themselves, they say what they say, but when you get into actual game and application with these things and you start going up against, okay, this is clearly the #1 meta. How does this compare to that? How does, this compare to options 2, 3, 4 here? Then you start to get a better understanding of, oh, this update really helped out and I can actually compete with this MW3 sub or this MW3 rifle, or MW2 if you want to go all the way back, right? Or it's close, but maybe it could use a little more work, and then perhaps that's something in the future that they adjust even more with patch notes. In general, though, this is an update that I was pretty surprised to see, in all honesty, just because for so long, really ever since the end of Warzone 1, it's been a pretty definitive, hey, the new game's guns are absolutely going to be the meta. Even in Warzone 1, we had that conversation a lot, but they worked, I think, more over time to focus on, hey, yes, it's the Cold War era, but the Grau and the Kilo are still very good. Or yes, it's the Vanguard era, but the AMAX is still usable, or the MP5 is still usable, right? Whereas in recent years, it's just been, this is the new game. Okay, enjoy using these weapons. Don't try the old ones because they're gonna suck. I like that they're focusing more on this early on into the year. You know, usually it's not till season 5, season 6 when some of the meta balances out more. Attacking this now, I think, opens up the meta even more earlier on into the year, which I think is objectively a W here. But really cool that they did this update. I'm excited to see how this is going to impact some of these older weapons, even though they're newer weapons in terms of era and everything, with how it is in Black Ops 6 Warzone, short term and long term, because now we might see specific tuning updates for some of these MW3 guns as well, to make them potentially even more competitive. So we'll have to keep an eye on the upcoming patch notes and changes here, but just outright to start Season 2 Reloaded, while it was a bit of a controversial update in terms of some other changes, this is a pretty cool W in my opinion. That is going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. And if you are new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you are in the know for everything going on in COD, feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.